is about other in Levinas, and as you know, it's a very common topic nowadays about the self and other in different fields of studies. But my focus here is on ethics, the ideas of Levinas, and the other in ethics. As you know, Levinas is a Lithuanian French scholar in the first of 20th century, and he's renowned and famous for his ideas about the other. Therefore, I have chosen him because he has many books and writings about the other French language. Therefore, he is a French scholar, and I think it is necessary to begin with the words. Other, as an English word, comes back to Old English and also Proto-Germanic, but lastly, Proto-Indo-European. It is important because maybe in the other languages other than Indo-European, we have not such a word like other. Therefore, it is very important to make a distinction and be aware that maybe this is not a universal word or term, but is a very specific term and word among the Indo-European languages like French, German, English, Persian, and the other languages. In Indo-European, Proto-Indo-European root, other comes back to antero or altero. It is a very interesting word because essentially it means the second. The essential meaning of altero in Indo-European, also in Latin language, means the second in distinction and in contrast with the first. Therefore, there is something called first, and then we have something that is second, and this is other than the first. There are a very distinction between first and the second, and they are not the same. Maybe sometimes they are in oppositional relations with each other, between self and the other, or first and second, for example, flow. Therefore, I think this core meaning in the altero or antero is reflected in the English word other. My first conclusion from this etymology is that other in English means difficult or different and distinct, something that is additional, and something that remains. These are three implications of the word altero and then other in English. Therefore, we should have attention to this point that when we speak of the other, there are embedded three other meanings that we should consider something that is different. They are not the same, especially this topic. As Philip said, it is very important in philosophy, in ethics, in politics, in sociology, that other is indifferent and is not the same with the self. But as I said, Levinas is a French philosopher, and therefore it is interesting that he uses two French words for the one English word, other. And it is very good point. He has l'autre và autrui. L'autre means the other. Most translators in English use the word other with lowercase for the l'autre, and for autrui they use other with O capital. Therefore, first we should make a distinction when we speak of the other in Levinas, what he means, the other as the lowercase or the other with the O capital. Because for him, these are two distinct terms in French. As you see in English, we use one word for two French words. For him, l'autre or other with lowercase is something external. It is out of we as human beings. Therefore, it has distinction and it has distance with us, like a tree, like this table, like this microphone. All these are the other with lowercase. Objective, external things. Animal, for example, from the point of view of the Levinas, is other. But what is important for him as a philosopher is autrui, or other with O, big O. He says that other is specifically for human beings. We are not permitted to use the other with O big for the objects or animals or anything other than human beings. Therefore, it is specific for human beings. Secondly, other with O big is something irreducible. It means that it is something independent that you can not reduce it to something else, and something, a kind of reduction. You can't do a kind of reduction when you speak of human beings, that X is like Y or the other examples. Or you can reduce the people, different levels, all are the same. But all of them are irreducible to each other. Everyone is in a radical, for example, distinction and distance from each other. I reach to the third distinction of the other from Levinas, that is, other for him as human beings is completely different from self or I. Therefore, there is a very rooted and radical difference between I and the other. And this distinction, this differentiation, from the point of view of the Levinas, is the root of ethics. It makes the discussion very important from the Levinas that, as I said, he is the philosopher of the other, or autrui, that it is necessary that we make human beings distinctive of each other, and at the same time, they have responsibility and engagement, encounter with each other too. And it is the starting point of ethics when you want to speak about the ethics. Another point, another topic I want to speak about is the grammar of the word. After this etymology, the grammar of the word other in English and in French. In English, as we know, we can use other in 6 functions: as adjective, as pronoun, as determiner, as adverb, as noun, as verb. As a verb is a recent development, but as a noun is less common word. But usually we use it as an adjective and pronoun in English. The same difference we can see in the French word autrui. It is usually a pronoun, an indefinite pronoun, and it can't be it can be a subject, an epithet, and it takes no definite or indefinite article, but it is essentially masculine, because in French the words have gender. Therefore, autrui, in distinction of the other in English, has a masculine gender, and also it is used very limited. It has not the 6 usages that other has in English. It has only mostly one usage that is used as pronoun. From these philological and grammatical points, Levinas seems to want to make a conclusion, or 3 conclusions. First, the frequency and the uses of the word autrui in one of his famous works, Totality and Infinity, is about 232 times, but uses the word l'autre about 174 times. Therefore, this is the logic. He is famous as a philosopher of the other. He uses autrui 232 times. The second point is that l'autrui has a stable, has an invariable form in French. Therefore, in order to agree in gender and number, it doesn't change its spelling. Therefore, although the gender and the number should coordinate with the noun, but usually its spelling is the same. And the third point that is very important is that this word has both singular and plural form. But the nuances is that when we use autrui as a plural form, it also includes especially individual human beings. Therefore, when we use people as a community, as a group, the French language emphasized about the singular, the individual, each individual in this group. Therefore, it has completely a singular and plural meaning. As I said, this terminology, this term can be used in different fields of studies, like philosophy and politics and sociology and ethics. That is my focus. In philosophy, the main issue or the main question is about the existence of the other human beings that are different from I or ego. Therefore, in philosophy, we as a conscious human beings know that the other human beings are different from us. We know this. We understand this. And therefore, it is necessary to make a distinction between self and other as the second. I am the first, and the other people, the other persons, individuals are the second. In the politics, nowadays it is very usual in different cultures or political cultures is the differentiation between when you want to have a national, for example, identity, and then you make a categorization of the other people that are out of this national identity, that could be foreigner or alien people. Therefore, politics or politicians usually are involved in order to make a distinction and categorization between national identity or familiar identity, but mostly in political sphere we have national identities, and the other peoples out of this national identity that they are, for example, can be enemy, can be every other expression that you use, but all of them are the other than the national identity that is the first identity, and their identity is the second one. They are external to the national identity, and therefore they adapt different policies in order to treat the others. But maybe the interesting thing is in sociology, that is the very important, how society and how the different communities produce othering and otherness between different groups or the population or the citizens. Therefore, many different people, many different groups or institutions in the social process can produce or reproduce and can fight or, for example, promote different groups as the other that should be out of their concern or are out of their concern because they are the second and the priority comes back to the first. They are the subsidiary or they are on the margin. But in ethics, especially speaking of Emmanuel Levinas, is very, very important because it is our concern. He thinks that in ethics, as the ethical in distinction of morality that he mentions later on, we should consider all the people at the same footing. And therefore, it is important to make an equality between different people. Otherwise, we are out of ethics. We refer and we use violence, and when there is violence, there is no things we speak of ethics. Therefore, when in ethics we have different categorization of the people, not on an equal level, they are unequal. Therefore, you make a kind of imbalance of power between different levels. Some are up, some are down, and therefore the up wants to consolidate and to make and to reserve the second and the other class or group, and it makes a kind of, they need a kind of violence in order to preserve such imbalance. As I said, the concern of Levinas is about the ethics that has a specific relation with the community, with the social, and not with moral, that is something more individual. And therefore he considers people as a group of people, not as individual people. When he speaks of other in ethics with O capital, he means the other groups, the other class of people, but mostly as a group, not as relation of the individual with individual. According to Levinas, engaging with the other is based on a difference or difference. It's very important that Levinas thinks we should preserve and respect the difference between different people, between different individuals, and don't then reduce to what I say, or what I am, or the self is, or the self says, or the self acts. And at the same time, this difference means that you should engage with them, and not a neutral player. You should engage and encounter with this different. without reducing him or her to yourself. Therefore, ethics as a practical notion, not theoretical, for him is essentially engaging and encountering with the other people in the community as a group that are different. Therefore, for Levinas, other means to be different, then not to be second. Only it is not the same as you, but it is different from you. He a little bit reduces the negative connotations of the word other. I think so. Autrui, maybe, as I said, it has a masculine gender, and therefore it is maybe not, for the French culture, is not a good, very positive term, has negative connotations. Another point in his discussions of ethics is about you are not permitted the people reduce them to something that is the same, as I mentioned, but I should emphasize, because self is based on and constructed of the same. Because in ethics, usually in different philosophers, it is presupposed that what I say is applicable to other people because they are like me, a rational human being. What I say, they say so. Therefore, there is no difference or distance between what I say and what the other people from different languages and cultures say. They say what I say, if you ask them. But Levinas is opposite to this idea. He says that they are different and you have not permission ethically to reduce them to what you say. They are not the same as you. Therefore, they have difference with you. And such a difference must produce in you a kind of care and wonder. And this is the starting point, the spring point of the ethics, that you should have a positive feeling toward the other people. It is not kind of epistemological or linguistic things. They are things that happen after that. First of all, you have a feeling of the wonder about the things that is different from you. It is not the same as you, that you take for granted everything and say he's simply like me. It has nothing I learned from him. He's my second eye. But this, therefore, for Levinas, the emphasis is that when you see the other people as different from yourself, you're curious about them. You become curious about them. You wonder, you want to encounter, you want to engage with them. And this is a positive feeling that you can have toward the other people that are not the same as you. Although he mentions to the difficulties, the problems that we have encountered with the other, but he says that the challenges are very positive. Because the other people make you understandable or make you aware to rethink about your own identity. When you say, I am X, from, for example, 0 up to 20, during the development of the years, it has nothing for you interesting, but the other, as a difference, stimulates you, motivates you to think about your self-identity, because he is different from your identity. One of the last points that he mentions in his ideas about other, as I said, is the philosopher of the other in the Western philosophy, is that encounter with the other starts face to face. It is a very direct and without any obstacle or any abstract concept and notions. Engagement or encounter is the face-to-face relation with the other peoples. It's not something that can be done to the other tools that can be immediate. It is an immediate face-to-face encounter, effacement with the other people. The concept of face, it is very interesting because face, everybody has a specific face. They are not the same in very minority. For him, every individual as a man or woman has a specific face for himself. Therefore, you can't reduce them to your own face. You should accept it. The same is in ethics. Why do you say I should act according to your ideas or actions? But you should consider and follow what and how is my face, how is my values. You should try to understand the features and the distinctions that you can see in my face. Therefore, face to face, in actuality, in daily living, and also in concept, in ideas, denotes to take the face of everybody as it is, accept it as it is, not to make any agrandissement or the other things, and then you start encounter with them. The conclusion up to here is that the relation in ethics for Levinas is completely different, not from self to the other, but the relations begins from the other to the self. This very critical thesis or hypothesis of the Levinas, that in contrast to Kant or Heidegger or the other philosophers, I don't begin from the ontos or entity and existence and then come to the other. I start from the other and then I come back to the I or ego. Because if there is no other, there is no I. They should stimulate me. They should motivate me who I am. As a general conclusion, therefore the concern of Levinas as an ethical philosopher, European ethical philosopher, instead of speaking about the self and saying soi-même, he speaks of the other or different, autrui, différence. And soi-même is the product and result of encounter and engagement with the other that is essentially and basically different. And this is the starting point of making an ethical relations. Secondly, the other individual, the other that is in difference, not in similarity with me, is infinite. It is a very, I think, interesting concept in ethics, that you see the other people as infinite and not in a specific, tight categorization or box. He considers that the other is infinite. Therefore, if he or she is infinite, you can simply reduce him or her to one category. It's very, very difficult to reduce infinity to something that is finite. Therefore, the title of his main book, as I said, is about the infinity and totality. Because he thinks that these are two opposite concepts. Because he thinks that when we speak of totality, we usually try to reduce everything to something total, and it is something negative, like totalitarian regime in the speak. Why it is bad? Because it wants to reduce all the different and plural things to something definite as A or B, and that's it. Point. But when we consider the other people infinite, it is very difficult, and we should be cautious to speak about the other people and the other individuals at the ethical level. The third point, general point, is about that for him, ethics is the first philosophy. It's very, I think, radical and deconstructive idea of Levinas that not metaphysics, as for example in my country, Iran, metaphysics is the totality, is the first and the last thing. He is against this idea that the ethics is the first philosophy, not metaphysics is the first philosophy, because it seems that there is some violence happen when you reduce everything to some single and focal point, that there is no escape from that focal point, and everyone should come into this focal point, otherwise he is othering and stranger and outsider, not inside. Everything should be inside. And the fourth point, that I think is very important as the last point, is about be more cautious about making some categorization or classification that wants to make everything understandable, everything at hand, and very easy to use, very easy to understand, like fast food thinking. If you are not authorized in ethical to reduce, I think it's a good word, to reduce everything to the self, to the ego, to the other self. And because as he says in language also, we use a kind of violence. It's not a very easy task to, for example, in ethics, you can bring all the people under one umbrella and to name it, for example, X or Z. Therefore, it is very difficult, and your language also becomes very violent. You use a violent language in order to bring the plurality and the multiplicity under one package, and to speak of the relation of the one with one that is the same as the one. Therefore, as I try to through my title, other should not be too big in order to deconstruct the other position and the other identity. And ethics essentially begins with other orientation, not self-orientation, and then to apply my orientation to the other orientations. Thank you for listening.